The thing that founders need to work on the most, it'd be very simply this: it's getting the right people on the bus, making sure that they're in the right seat, and make sure that they know where the bus is supposed to be going. When you do not have marketing and sales locked in, you end up taking on anybody who wants to work with you, right? And so whether that's a product or a service, you try to end up being a little bit of everything for everybody because you're so afraid you might lose any opportunity. In most organizations, you have a sales leader and a marketing leader that are actually competing for resources and attention within the organization, right? You have budget for customer acquisition. And the marketing leader thinks it should all be marketing, and the sales leader thinks it should all be sales, and they're trying to fight for that positioning, and they're not even talking to each other about how to deliver leads. And unless you have a CEO who is very sales and marketing focused and can be the balancer or the director for those two departments, then you have these silos that are operating independently. What I would say is having a very locked down sales environment where everyone has to follow a very specific script is probably going to chase away your top performers. You better have a really great product or system or something else that makes it worth it for someone to deal with that. At the same time, if you have no systems in place, the salespeople get mad because none of their deals can get over the finish line, right? If you allow a salesperson to submit crap into the system, and the system's broken all the time, like I can't get my deals done. It's like, well, yeah, because everyone's submitting crap and you don't want rules. So you have to just be very...
Hi there, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this episode, I had a discussion with Mark Gordon. Mark is a rebel CRO. He scaled company from 1 million to 30 million plus in our revenue, rebuilt GTM engines in a SaaS, services, and a tech. His core idea is that most companies face clarity and alignment issues, not a sales problems. Mark founded integrated go-to-market solutions, helping B2B founders align messaging, lead gen, sales process, and tech into a closing system. If your team can't explain what you do, your outbound sales get ignored, and you are still the top salesperson, this episode for you. Let's dive in with Mark Gordon. Hey, before we start the discussion, I just have one quick favor to ask. What we find recently is about 35% people who watch our content, they don't subscribe to our channel. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe, send us your feedback, and share with your friends. Your support is very important to us. Allow us to focus on our right discussions and deliver value on a weekly basis. Thank you. Enjoy this episode. Please welcome Mark Gordon. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today our guest is Mark Gordon. Mark, you've been working with the business leaders. You've been helping them out with both marketing and sales in many different areas. So I'm looking forward to learning from you. Looking forward to a discussion. Thank you so much for time today, Mark.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this as well.
Likewise. So you work with a lot of business leaders, Mark. Let's start with, what do you see as some of the biggest challenge these days people up against? What problem they're trying to solve in the business?
For founders, you said, or for sales leaders? You broke up there for 1 second.
The founders. Let's talk about business leadership standpoint.
Yeah, I still think if I had to articulate, the thing that founders need to work on the most, it'd be very simply this: it's getting the right people on the bus, making sure that they're in the right seat, and make sure that they know where the bus is supposed to be going. And I know that sounds overly simplified, but I just still find that founders are trying to make it work with the people they already have, even when they know they're not the perfect fit, or they accept these kind of negotiated truces in their business where they know somebody is good enough, but not great. And they think that they're going to get differentiated results. But the reality is that the formula for how well your business is going to do is right people, right seats in the direction of the bus. And you have to change those things if you're not getting the results you want.
Got it. So if you give us a little background, Mark, what is your company, IGTMS about? What do you guys do? Is that the focus of your company, or what do you guys do in that company?
Yeah, so integrated go-to-market solutions, we come in sort of as fractional chief revenue officers, but instead of a long-term engagement, we do 4-month go-to-market overhauls, transformations, where we sit down and analyze everything from messaging, product market fit, customer acquisition cost and total lifetime value, through lead generation, sales execution, and what we call revenue technology. We make sure all of those things are aligned in a very specific focus, and that unlocks growth for the companies that we work with. And we have all sorts of different stories, and the problems we solve for each client can look very different. Sometimes it's a personnel problem. Sometimes it's a messaging problem. Sometimes it's a leadership problem. But usually it comes down to the right people in the right seats, and with a very clear direction on where they're supposed to be going.
So, do they have a direction, Mark? Is that seems to be the top leadership challenge, right? Not having a direction. People you can deal with the later on, but if the company doesn't have a right direction, they don't know where they're going. That's a hard problem to solve from a marketing standpoint.
Well, yeah. So when you do not have marketing and sales locked in, you end up taking on anybody who wants to work with you, right? And so whether that's a product or a service, you try to end up being a little bit of everything for everybody because you're so afraid you might lose any opportunity. And you can't dial in your sales and marketing until you're willing to say who you're not for. Because if you're for everybody, the people that you should be most for don't know it. They don't know when they get to your website or anything else. And so that struggle of saying, okay, this is who we're for, meaning we're not going to take on every project that walks in the door. We're not going to sell or try to sell to every single person who can buy our product or service. We're going to say we're the absolute best in this niche, messaging for that, and then delivering marketing and sales that leads to predictable growth is the step that a lot of these founders need to take. And so really what I mean by saying knowing where you want to go is okay, saying what do we do and who do we do it for? Right. And then what is the thing they can expect, the value they can expect from doing that with us? And until you nail that, everything else is very hard. And once you've nailed that, most things become very easy.
Yeah, that is a challenge. I think a lot of service companies deal with the market. Is they don't want to lose a market by being a niche on a certain area. They want to capture the whole market, and they want to stay general. I think that's a challenge with a lot of technology companies as well. That they want to stay general because they don't want to lose any piece of the market. So by doing that, it's very hard to compete. It's very hard to go in one direction. I guess as you mentioned that you're trying to cater to everybody, not to a specific audience.
Well, again, I think you see sometimes too, people are like, oh, we want to be, an upscale brand or a luxury brand, and we want to be able to be it for everybody. Well, those two things do not work together, right? If you want to deliver a differentiated customer experience, it means that you're the best at what you do. In order to be the best at what you do, you have to narrow your focus. You can't be the best at 100 things or even three things most of the time, right? And so by saying this is what we do and who we do it for, you give yourself a chance to be exceptional at it. And then you can charge those premium prices because you'll be able to deliver a differentiated result. And so, in my business too, I could teach sales and marketing to anybody, right? But by niching down and making sure that we focus on what we focus on, we ensure that we deliver the absolute best results because we know those markets, we know those clients, and we know what they need.
So you mentioned a good point there, Mark. If you specialize in something, then you can almost control the prices you want to charge, right? Otherwise, you end up being a very price conscious the company. But if you specialize in something, nobody can do better than you do. You can definitely control the price. You can demand the prices that you want.
Absolutely, especially if there's an ROI on what you do, right? I mean, then it becomes a no-brainer.
Got it. So how do you guys help out in a sales? I know you guys focus on a marketing side, but how do you guys interact with the sales? How do you bridge the gap from a marketing to sales, Mark?
Well, the first thing is we have a centralized messaging that we align on, meaning we know what we do, we know who we do it for, we know what our position is among our competition in the marketplace. Oftentimes, we're also trying to articulate what makes us different. Maybe we even try to create a subcategory that we own that makes us different than our competition. But once we know who we're targeting, we make things much easier for sales, right? Because now sales is coming into a situation where they know what kind of customers they're going to be having conversations with, what the needs are of that specific customer group, and then they become problem solvers instead of salespeople. And with that, what we're looking for is to the challenger sales methodology, which is a big part of what we believe, and we kind of combine some of our own IGTMS secret sauce with it. But we believe that salespeople in 2026 need to be providing value to their target audience by, at a minimum, giving them a new perspective or way to see the problems they have, and hopefully a potentially new solve for what those problems are. And I think if you can do that, and you can do it a genuine way for a niche audience, I think sales becomes pretty easy.
Yeah, that I heard. So from a lot of business leaders, the challenge is that both marketing and sales are not on the same page. They marketing trying to communicate something else, but the messaging is different, but the sales trying to sell, right? So there's always disconnect. How do you bridge that communication and messaging gap between these two teams, Mark, even though they're trying to achieve two different things?
Well, you just explained the entire need for the chief revenue officer position. And that's where I was a CEO and a chief revenue officer, because in most organizations, you have a sales leader and a marketing leader that are actually competing for resources and attention within the organization, right? You have budget for customer acquisition. And the marketing leader thinks it should all be marketing, and the sales leader thinks it should all be sales, and they're trying to fight for that positioning, and they're not even talking to each other about how to deliver leads. And unless you have a CEO who is very sales and marketing focused and can be the balancer or the director for those two departments, then you have these silos that are operating independently. And so just the idea they would ever be able to work together, the system is built specifically so they're competing. They're never going to be working together in a collaborative way. Everyone's trying to take credit for the success. And so they're all trying to win the game by themselves. And so that's why, we are that fractional chief revenue officer piece for companies that are not big enough to go out and have a chief revenue officer. Because when you start the strategy up here and you get to dictate down to marketing what the messaging is, and you dictate to sales what the messaging is, now you have alignment by nature, right? Now that is one direction everyone's operating in. In other words, you have somebody at the top saying the bus is going here. Your job is to get us there, as opposed to, hey, we have a bus. Where do you want to drive it? And then two people are driving it in different directions. And so, and that's the difference between having that chief revenue officer leadership or not.
Yeah, one of the challenges I see is Mark, is content creation. Both marketing creates content, for their own use, and sales create content. And sometimes the content that creates a messaging going out to the customer that sometimes is confusing or is not on the same page, or could be two different directions. So I think those are the challenges that these days. There's organic content, there's a content that created by companies. So there's so much content out there that both team creates the content, but it's not aligned properly.
I think what you're describing is really just a failure of leadership. And I know that's like a harsh way to say it, but when I come into a new company with a client, I'll interview their entire leadership team and a couple of their clients. And I ask people very candidly, what does your company do and who do you do it for? Some people can't answer at all. Most people answer in 2 minutes or 3 minutes of just blabbing on, and they're kind of missing it and trying to give an all comprehensive answer. And everyone's 2 or 3 minutes are either a little bit different or significantly different. And then you wonder why people aren't on the same page and no one knows what's going on or what their role is. The best companies, when you meet those 8 people, they have a 1 or 2 sentence explanation of what that company does and who they do it for. And that simplicity and alignment makes messaging easy, right? And then beyond those 1 or 2 sentences, they have real documents that say, here's how we talk about it. Here's how we don't talk about it. Not only here's who we're for, but here's who we're not for. And that clarity allows somebody to have freedom to create content that's within the boundaries of the game that we're playing, right? The same thing we see, maybe another way to say it is like culture and values, right? A lot of companies have culture and values. But if you don't have mechanisms for how you hire to, fire to, and promote to those core values, they're just words on a piece of paper on a wall. They don't mean anything. Until you're willing to fire your best salesperson because they're living outside your values, or promote somebody or not promote somebody who deserves a promotion because they're not living those values, they're not core values. It's the same thing with your messaging, marketing, and sales. Until you're willing to fire somebody in marketing for living outside your messaging, you don't have messaging. Until you're willing to promote somebody who does a great job just because they're promoting the messaging that you've aligned on and it's working and they're getting leads, you don't have messaging. You have to create a playbook or a framework for which people need to live. Everybody needs to understand the rules of the game and their direction of the bus. And then within that, have as much freedom as you can possibly give them to get results. But freedom without that responsibility for results and without those frameworks in place, it's anarchy. So I think everyone wants freedom and no one wants anarchy. So how do you put the things in place that allow for freedom without anarchy?
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of hard work comes in, Mark, as well. You could build the playbooks, you train people, you bring them to the level where you want them to, everybody's in a sync, but then the turnover happens, right? You start from a zero again with the new people, right? So I think that's where a lot of hard work, that's where the playbook comes in very handy, or all the training comes very handy. That how do you bring somebody from outside and bring them on the same level where the other people are, they've been working on the same projects.
Yeah, people they say oftentimes people don't fall to the level of expectations, they fall to the level of your systems, right? And
Mm-hmm.
another way to say that is they'll fall to whatever level that you tolerate people falling to, right? Is as a business, what behaviors or messaging or things like that do we tolerate? Where do we want freedom and where do we want standards? And you have to be very, very clear about those things, and then you have to be willing to enforce them. And this sounds like I'm being like like Machiavellian about some of this stuff. I'm not, like, in any way. I think I
Mm-hmm.
believe in a very happy workplace, but I believe that structure actually creates the room for people to experience happiness and joy. Without that structure, people are very confused. They feel like they're in a dark room where they can't find the walls.
Mm-hmm.
People want direction and then freedom to operate inside of that direction. They don't want complete freedom in a way where they can't find where the infrastructure is or where they have that support system in place to make good decisions for the business outcome. And again, that lack of being able to find the walls is why you have a messaging, a marketing team and a sales team operating in completely different universes. You have to be able to
Got it.
lead.
And how do you train people, make sure that they not only we created a content or created all the playbooks, but they practice that ongoing basis? Because if you repeat it once or twice, people are gonna forget about all this stuff, right?
Yeah, again, people don't do what you expect, they do what you inspect. And so, one of the things that when I was in the mortgage industry, we'd have these huge sales teams all over the country, and we'd have loan officers that were making the company millions of dollars a year, making themselves $1 million a year. And people would be like, why can't you just train them? Why can't you just train them? It's like,
Yeah.
to fill out the file correctly, right? It's like, I'm going to fill the file. It's like,
Yeah.
guys, because it's not a priority for them and it's never going to be. And we have to decide, are we willing to fire $1 million producer who's making millions of dollars for the company because they don't fill out the form correctly? No, we're not. Okay, well then what are we willing to do? How about this? How about we design a system so that until the form is filled out correctly, they
Mm-hmm.
can't send it to the next step. And then we have an inspection process on the other side that if they somehow get it through and it's not filled out correctly, we just kick it back to the loan officer. We say, hey, listen, it's not filled out correctly, fill it out again. Well, they'll be so mad. Well, they'll be mad twice. But you know what loan officers don't want to do? Fill out the form 4 times. So you know what happens is they learn, you train them through negative reinforcement of sending the file back to them. You don't train them through another class or suggesting it or begging them. You make it so it's impossible for them to get to the next step without doing it correctly. And then sure enough, all the problems went away. Suddenly all of our loan officers had no problems with training once the penalty for not being trained was they had to do more work. And that was it, because they all know how to get paid. They all know how to get the job done. And so how can you create systems that make it less painful for people to do things the right way? And until you do, you have to change. If you have a problem with the result, you need to change the incentive structure. It's very simple, right? So the training comes down to, okay, hey, if we inspect we have AI listen to your calls. If you don't follow these processes, you're gonna have to go for extra training. If you do follow these processes, you don't have any extra training. Guess what? No one wants to come to the extra training. Everyone suddenly follows the protocol. It's very simple, right? Again, so if you the train, and again, you have to ask yourself also, how important is it to you? Or they have to get to a certain close rate, right? If you close 40% of your deals, I don't care what system you're using, right? 40% of your calls become sales. Say whatever you got to say, as long as it's ethical, right? Like, just get it done, right? So where are your values? Where are your rules of the game?
Yeah. Does that make it a little bit difficult? Because a lot of people work in a decentralized environment these days. Some people in office, some people working from home as well. Does that make that following the system? I understand, we get built a bunch of checks and balances in a system. So make sure we check all that stuff before we can process something and put them through the training. But working remotely or on decentralized environment these days, does that create a little bit challenges that what it used to be before COVID?
Well, I'd say it creates some new challenges, but I would say overall, it's never been easier to run inspection processes. I mean, we literally have AI that can listen to every single thing that we do, see what we're doing, report back to us. Like, I mean, there's never been for the companies that want it, more transparency into what's going on inside their organizations. You can have complete control, whether someone's here or anywhere. What I would say is companies should be very thoughtful about what their culture is and what's really important to them, right? And so what I would say is having a very locked down sales environment where everyone has to follow a very specific script is probably going to chase away your top performers. You better have a really great product or system or something else that makes it worth it for someone to deal with that. At the same time, if you have no systems in place, the salespeople get mad because none of their deals can get over the finish line, right? If you allow a salesperson to submit crap into the system, then the system's broken all the time. Like, I can't get my deals done. It's like, well, yeah, because everyone's submitting crap and you don't want rules. So you have to just be very thoughtful about the cost benefit analysis of having these infrastructures and inspection processes in place. And again, that's why it all really starts with knowing what's really important to you as an organization. Where are we going? What are our culture and values? Are those aligned for performance, right? Do we value performance over everything else? And, if you want to have an A player in every seat, you better create an environment where motivated people can thrive. Well, what does that mean? It means clear guardrails and freedom within them. It means systems that reward that force compliance in the areas where we have to have compliance and don't force it in the areas where we don't need to have it. And so you need smart system design, and you need people who understand both operate, same the way you need somebody over top sales and marketing as a chief revenue officer. You better have a president of the company that has a deep understanding of both operations and sales and can lead on both sides of that equation as well. Because if those teams aren't working together and they're under siloed leadership, that fractures your organization as well.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple of times AI, Mark. Is that changing the landscape by both a marketing and a sales side? And how about the people who've been in the business for a long time? They have to work extra hard to pick up the skill set, right? That's not skill set we had for many years.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything that is I've been in the workforce since 2004. 22 years. I've over and over again, I've been told everything's changing. Like, for instance, in the mortgage industry, which is in for a very long time, they kept telling us the loan officer was going to go away. Everyone was going to get their loans online. They'd have no local loan officers. Yet almost the vast majority, and by the way, they told me realtors were going to go away. No one was going to use a realtor. In 2025, a higher percentage of real estate transactions were done with a realtor than ever before. And most people got their mortgages through whoever their realtor recommended, the same way it was 22 years ago. AI, I don't think is going to be like that. And I think it is. And so we've built a false sense of security around, well, things don't really change. We've heard they're going to change, but they change very slowly. People can adapt. AI has not been that for us in our business. I would say that it's completely changed the way that we hire. And I'll give you an example. If you have average or slightly above average people in 2026, their work product is 3 to 5 times. They are 3 times as productive in a lot of cases as they were 5 years ago. Well, now you have 3 times as much average work. If fewer better people paid above market for exceptional work is the only business model that makes sense today, because you can multiply that person's great work by 3 times, by 5 times, by 10 times, depending on what role they're in, based on the amount you're able to leverage with AI. And so if you haven't seen it in your business yet, you're already falling behind. Almost every process that we have here at IGTMS is aided by AI. My preparation for this call today was a report that was generated for AI that reminded me of all the things that we talked about in our pre-interview. It did a summary for me with all the questions you've asked to your previous guest. I was able to read that for 8 minutes before we started this call today to prepare. It would have taken me hours to prepare for this meeting a year or two ago, right? Or 2 years ago. And so if you aren't using this to make your life more efficient, you're already falling behind. You just can't see it yet.
Yeah, it's one of the example I was playing with it over the weekend. These days you can go to AI and say, please listen, give me 10 companies in my for my ideal client. Here's a report from our ideal client. Use this and give me 10 companies and give me their CEOs, the contact information, and plus show me the company's revenue and how big the company is. and put that in an Excel sheet and send it to me. That would happen in about like 3-4 minutes. In the olden days, we would have spent probably, days and days to trying to figure out that information and look for contact information and then company information would have taken days to figure that out.
I mean, we've taken it steps further than that even. When someone books a call on my Calendly, it's immediately sending a message into my AI that is creating reports and custom outreach for that person to warm them up for our calls. And then when I get to the sales call, it tells me what questions I should be asking, what events are going on in their company, any PR releases they've had out, and all that is being delivered directly to my Slack as a direct message from my AI bot named Dottie, who does all this pre-work for me in doing that, right? And she reminds me if I have a sales call coming up, and she reminds me there's somebody to follow up with, and we have all these things that are built out. And so, is it perfect yet? No. Can we automate everything away? No. But does it see? Am I 5 times as productive at this job as I was 3 years ago? Absolutely.
Without having a personal assistant, it's giving you all the stuff you need to function.
Yeah, you know what my personal assistant does now? They build out more AI capabilities, right? I mean, that's my personal assistant spends time figuring out how to automate a new thing or adding in a new thing. I mean, that is the new assistant. It's how do we take this thing that you would have used to have done for me and make it so it happens every single time? And where are the new opportunities that are coming up every day? And by the way, there's a new version of AI every day that changes what our capabilities are. It's impossible to keep up. And so, it's not just a matter of the minimum competency level of using these tools in your day-to-day. It's as a founder, understanding the capabilities of these tools so you can even start to imagine what's possible with the next automation, the next thing, and the next iteration. And now that the models themselves are being built by models, right? On Claude's last launch, 80 or 90% of the model was built by the previous model. We can expect that iteration to accelerate.
Yeah, either Cloud or Manus. If you look at these kind of AI models, they have an AI agent, very powerful. They're not just simply just chatting with you. They actually take an action on your behalf. Whatever you want it to do, they will go to different systems and they will do whatever you want them to do.
I have a computer running full time where it's in a different version of my Chrome, just working on my stuff all day.
Very interesting. You think that will impact the salespeople as well? One of the limit we had with the sales. How many contacts can you handle? How many leads can you handle? Making them productive. Ceilings get removed because you can handle a lot more work that previously you could handle. They'll definitely give them a much bigger pipeline to handle.
Yeah, I'm gonna say two. I think the short answer is yes, it's gonna impact it. I think 2 things are gonna happen. One is I think in-person contact may become more important. So you may see salespeople that in some ways can handle less clients in some ways, or because they have to go visit people or develop those personal relationships. So there's going to be more times at conferences. So I think human touch is going to continue to become more important. At the same time, yes, something that would have taken a salesperson 3 hours of research should now be done automated in 3 minutes, and it should take them 10 minutes just to read what the results were. And I will tell you that even this, like, I do so many calls. I had a hard time remembering why I was coming here today. I would have to spend, I could spend an hour refreshing my memory. I didn't have to. I had my transcript from that first call with you. It was loaded in. It had all my information. It prepared me for the call, predicted questions you were going to ask, gave me suggested answers, told me what to do. I mean, it's all there. And so, yes, if you aren't using that as a salesperson, the same way you would for a podcast, that's wild to me. The sales call I had right before this call, I thought I remembered, and I had notes from the first call, and I was like excited for this one. And then I went and checked my AI, and it brought up 3 things I'd completely forgotten about that ended up being the things that got the deal sold. And so, it's incredible what you can do with it. And if you're not using it, I promise you, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody who's using AI better than you.
Yeah. What can business owners who are looking to scale company, Mark, looking to build a company, scale companies, how can they use this to scale up, or add a speed to their business, what they're trying to, grow?
Well, I think there's limitless possibilities. I also think here's my best advice. We used to say explorers get killed and settlers get fat. What do I mean by that?
Mhm.
The people who were the first people that came to America, and the reason why we all remember Lois and Clark in America as explorers is because they're the only ones who survived. Everybody else got killed on the journey, right? Um, Settlers get fat. So in other words, with all of these things with AI, you don't have to be first. You do not have to be a pioneer. You don't have to be an explorer. You have to be aware of what people are doing. And then once there are real use cases of people in your world who are using these things for efficiency, you need to be fast to adopt and commit. And you need to be able to measure what you think success looks like and decide if you're going to keep going down the path. And so, I do see some companies that I think are obsessed with being on the cutting edge, and they end up kind of running themselves in circles or trying a lot of fits and stops and starts that don't kind of work out. But in terms of efficiencies, I would just say this. I think that in terms of repetitive or automated tasks, you should be that anything that you would have outsourced to an overseas assistant that you would have paid $5 or $10 an hour to can now be done by AI. And I think you're going to see it continue to expand from there.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So let's talk about your journey, Mark. How did you get involved in marketing and sales? Like, if you walk us through your journey, how do you get so good in this, both marketing and sales?
Yeah, I'll give you the 2-minute version. Started out as a salesperson in the mortgage industry. We did a year in insurance, and then I switched to the mortgage industry. Had tremendous success right out of the gate, and moved into management. And then 2008 hit, and my company ran out of business, and I was like, I don't know what to do. So me and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and another friend of mine, we started our own mortgage company right in the middle of the financial crisis. And while everybody else was crying over spilt milk, we were dumb and young and ambitious, and we built a company out of that. So that was a great experience, building a company in my 20s, learning through mistakes. I'd never read any books. I didn't know any successful entrepreneurs. I was just winging it and figuring it out. And we made millions and millions of dollars in mistakes, but we learned from those things. And then I sold that company and thought I'd stay there after I sold it. That did not work out, and decided I was going to start over again. So then I met another guy who had just kind of inherited a very old mortgage company that wasn't doing any business. And he was younger than me and smarter than me. And he'd read every book, and he knew all these amazing rich people. And I was like, I'm going to go learn from that guy for a little while. And that was the best decision I ever made, because then I was able to read all the books and do all the different things and apply all that book knowledge to all the pain and suffering I'd already experienced as an entrepreneur. And that was an amazing experience. And then after about 20 years in the mortgage industry, I had enough. And so I took a year off and started kind of just seeing what I wanted to do next. And really everything seemed like a good idea and nothing seemed like a great idea. So I started helping my friends and family with their businesses, and I loved it. And their business started thriving. And I was like, I think this is what I want to do. And so we decided that was going to be what we did full time. We created IGTMS, and I said, listen, I just want to help people grow their businesses and help them overcome obstacles that were very obvious to me. And here's the thing, I think that really locked it all in. In the mortgage industry in the United States, there are about 2,000 companies all selling the exact same product at the exact same price. All there is as differentiation is sales and marketing. And when you come from that world and then you go into areas where there is some product or service differentiation, you have real deep experience of knowing what matters and what doesn't matter and how to bring those products and services to market. And so that's kind of been my superpower here, which is kind of finding the way to sell what other people are having a hard time figuring out how to sell, and really helping people find that product market fit and that messaging fit. And so that's kind of how I got here. And now, I do 2 entrepreneur meetings a day with founders who are in some kind of need some help or some advice, whatever it is. And when there's a fit for both of us, we take those people on as clients and we help them get to the next level.
Very interesting. Right. Yeah, definitely. Coming from mortgage industry, if a sales and marketing is a key for them, it will help you, understand very deeper level that is, this is the differentiator in those industries. So, you can bring that knowledge and wisdom to other industry.
It's applied to everything every high ticket business we found we've been able to apply what we call our core four system, which is that messaging and product market fit, lead generation, sales execution, and revenue technology. And when you're an expert in those four things and you can bring them together in a business, the results seem to follow very quickly.
So if a business leader trying to take on these challenges, a lot of people, especially a lot of business leaders I know, business owners I know, they don't come from a sales or marketing background. They all come from a technical background. They're trying to build the businesses. If they want to start on a journey, where can they start? What's the area they can start from and then build upon it?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to, not to beat a dead horse, but what do we do? Who do we do it for? Who do we not do it for? And what is our place in the marketplace? Understanding based on your price and what services you plan to deliver and the level of execution, making sure that you understand what your customer acquisition cost is going to be, what the lifetime value of a customer is, and do those things make sense based on your growth trajectory? And if you don't have that little equation right, then you need to go pay somebody to help you. And sometimes it's not that you aren't smart enough or anything else. It's sometimes or experienced enough even. It's that when it's your company, it's very easy to lie to yourself. We are really good at, as human beings, of seeing the things that we want to see to give ourselves the hope we need to keep going forward. And I know some very talented entrepreneurs that are 10 years into a path that, they're like, if we just do this, I'm like, it shouldn't be this hard. You're too good. You're trying to sell the wrong thing to the wrong people. It doesn't work, right? Go do something else, right? And but they're pot committed. They've raised money. Their family put money, whatever, and they're like just stuck on the path. Sometimes you need somebody else to come in and go like, the math doesn't work on this thing, right? Like or your position is wrong in the marketplace, or the cost to acquire a customer doesn't justify the amount of revenue that you're going to take in. Those things are universal principles. And it's just stunning to me how often I run into very smart people who've never even thought about those things before. They're 3 years into a business adventure and they're like, what do you mean customer acquisition cost? What do you mean lifetime value? What do you mean that the math doesn't work? And I'm like, it doesn't work. Or I'll go to the website. Yeah. I'll be like, I've been on your website for 9 minutes and I cannot tell what you do. I don't know what you do. Yeah. I can't see it. It's like, what do you mean? It's obvious to me. It's like, no, it's not. Right? If you can't explain it to my mom or an 8th grader, you haven't figured out how to explain it. And everybody tells me like, my industry is different. It's technical. People get it. No, they don't. They don't. If I don't get it, they don't get it. I promise you. You can't try to sell it to the people who already get it, because if you're relying on somebody, and by the way, those people will never tell you they don't get it because their ego is attached to pretending they get it. They think you're telling them they're supposed to get it. They're going to say they get it. Test it with your mom. Test it with your friends. If you go to a dinner party and you're not excited to tell people what you do, it's because you don't know how to explain it in a way that they'll understand. You're probably going to struggle as a business.
Yeah. And, other part of that, Mark, is that there's so many items business owners have to tackle on, whether it's the financial problems or trying to scale, trying to solve product or service problems. There's so many areas and there's so many blind spots, when they're trying to do something. That's where we need people like you to simply find those blind spot and help a business owner to get wherever they need to get to. I mean, you can get there by making mistakes or spending 5-10 years to solve small problems, or find somebody who has solved those problems before and they know the blind spot and help you get there much faster. I think those are the only two choices. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time, you're going to waste a lot of time, and you're going to go through a lot of trial and error approaches.
Yeah, I mean, some of the irony of all of this for me is that when I was a business owner in my first mortgage company, I thought the idea of a consultant was ridiculous. I was like, I'm going to hire somebody from outside my business who's going to come in here and tell me to like run my business. I'm like, what do they know? We're different. We're a unique snowflake. I feel like we were doing something so revolutionary. It's one of my greatest regrets. I lost millions of dollars thinking I was unique and different. I had to figure it out on my own. When I look back on the problems I had now, and it was so obvious from anybody on the outside's perspective, but we didn't have anybody with any outside perspective. I didn't know any better, right? I was young and stupid. And so, I'll just share is if you're out there and you're having trouble figuring out what to do next, or it's not obvious, or you've been trying the same thing over and over again and it's not working, there's probably a very simple answer that you just can't see because of your blind spots. Bring somebody else in. And keep hunting, by the way, until you have a full body yes about the person you're bringing in. It should feel good when you let this person into your business. If it doesn't feel good, there's probably a reason. but keep meeting people until the right person emerges. And when you find that person, jump on it, because the right mentor or consultant can save you millions of dollars and thousands of hours of pain.
Yeah, and a business have a flexible points too, right? What got you to a million? It's not gonna get you to 5 million. What got you 5 million? It's not gonna get you to 10 millions, right? And those fluctuation points need different solutions. Every point's gonna be different. What you're trying to, and that's what I'm learning in a business. So what got you here is not gonna take you to the next step. It simply means that the problems are different. They're gonna come in a different form, different shapes. You're gonna need an expert like you who's been there before, can help you get over those challenges.
Yeah, no, I'll share this too. There's another thing that I think I had trouble with, and I see other founders have trouble with. It's not just that you have to operate differently; you have to become a completely different version of yourself, right? Like, one of my when I think about like Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, and I think about all the different versions of a CEO that he had to be along the way as he went from guy in a dorm room to running one of the biggest companies in the history of Earth, like you have to evolve as a person in a way that like doesn't even really make sense, right? Like, I mean, it's a crazy fast evolution process. As a founder, if you're stuck where you're stuck, it's because you have to now find a new way to operate. You have to become a different person. Your ego, which used to be attached to sales, now needs to be attached to leadership. Or it used to be that you were a problem solver. Now you need to be a system builder. And like those things are very different. They require different things, different learn, different reading, different people to grow and learn with. And so I just think that if you're stuck, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, right? And I think the faster you can introduce new information to yourself that it might help you see your problems differently and who you need to be differently, that's going to be the way forward.
Wow. That is the purpose of our channels, is provide different perspective. People can look at different ways and solve those problems. Very interesting. Great point, Mark. Where can people find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, this is the part I'm absolutely the worst at. So my website is igtms.com. That's Integrated Go-to-Market Solutions, igtms.com. My LinkedIn, I'm Mark D. Gordon. And you can reach out to me there, or on Instagram, I'm Mark D. Gordon. And you can reach out to me there. Any of those work. Follow us along on that social media, igtms.com. We also have a free go-to-market assessment. So if you're wondering how your company's doing in terms of messaging or your public go-to-market presence, there's a completely free assessment on our website that your company can take. Go there, fill it out. We'll send you back a score, and we'll recommend what you can do to improve it in 25 different areas. And then if you want, I'm happy to hop on a call with you as well to kind of walk you through what I would do if I was running the business there as well. So that's where you can find me.
Very interesting. I'm going to include all those links below this video, Mark. People can click a button and they can, whether they want to take an assessment or they want to connect with you, they can just click a button and reach out to you. But I will strongly recommend business leaders who are listening, business owner or watching or listening us, click a button below, talk to Mark. I gained different perspective. There's so much wisdom over the years that you've been working, Mark. I learned, a lot of things. I'm sure business owners who can, connect with you, they're going to take away a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of knowledge. Who knows where the discussion is going to take you, but you definitely get a different perspective after talking to you.
I really appreciate you having me on. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. Awesome.
Likewise, Mark. Thank you so much for your time. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thanks again.